Ooh, welcome back to a brand new and special episode of Beyond the Bank Phillies podcast. I am your host, Pete, along with my co-host, Henry. What is up, my guy?
So we now welcome on writer for Crossing Broad, host of Luke and I on the Phillies podcast, co-host of Phillies Digest, the man behind one of the best accounts on Phillies Twitter, Luke Arcaini. What's going on?
What's up, guys? How are you? We're
Good,
uh,
good,
we're
good.
we're getting close. The day by the day. I know we were saying before we all love spring training, but it gets to a point where you get a little tired of it towards the end. So I am ready for extremely ready for March 27th. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. I cannot wait.
Yeah, no, it gets to a point where it's like, all right, I love seeing the guys now, like through spring training, whatever, especially some of the young guys. And with the game the other day with the spring breakout game, it's great to see. But at the same time, I'm just like, all right, my adrenaline's getting ready for opening day. And I'm just like, let's get to that point. It's just like, come on now. You know what I mean? So, really glad to have you on here right now. We appreciate you taking the time out of the day to join us.
Totally.
But yeah, let's get right into it with the baseball talk. So first off, I want to start off saying, or asking you at least, up until this point of spring training, what player has kind of stood out to you so far?
Um, ooh, um, I really like the way Bryson Stotts looks so far. I know I tweeted this. I think it was the first or second game that he played. They definitely did a little adjusting on his swing from last year, and I think a big reason for that was because last year I think he had to change his swing a little bit because of the injury. So it seems like he's a little more upright now at the plate, which has been helping him. He's hitting like 320 down there right now. So he's looked really well. He's looked good. Other than that, I will say the 3, 4 to 5 guys that are in the running for that last bench spot, they're all putting up really good springs. Guys like Arroyo, Stevenson, Clemens, Kennedy, like all 4 of those guys are sort of making it hard for the team not to have them on the roster. So I think that's going to be like the biggest question I think over the next week is what guys start to get more playing time. Because I think if you get a guy like maybe like a Christian Arroyo in there, 5 out of the next 6 games, I think that's good for him. So I think that's kind of my biggest question right now for down there. Because I think other than that, I think the roster's pretty set. But as far as guys that have looked good, I really like what I've seen so far from Stott.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up Stock because in this first segment, I have a tweet from Alex Carr, MLB. He said Bryson Stott just drew his 9th walk of the spring. Now, this was during the game today. He struck out just 4 times. He's hitting 346 with a 976 OPS, and which is like extremely impressive.
Yeah.
He's looked really good. I agree with the last bench spot. I think it's Cody Clemens' job to lose at the moment, only because of everybody's options. Buddy Kennedy, he's basically out of options. I think Cal Stevenson is on one of his last ones. Arroyo may not, it's up in the air with him, but I've been really impressed with Rincones Jr. I know you guys had him on your pod. He just seems like such a good guy. He's been he's had a bunch of injuries the entire time he's been in the minor league system, basically. So he was one of the top rated prospects, but then he kind of fell behind the scenes when you have guys like Aiden Miller and Justin Crawford and Andrew Painter. So I'm really curious to see if he ends up coming up this year and when that'll be.
Yeah, I think for Rincones right now, and I will say, he was really cool. He just seems like a very genuine dude. And it's nice to finally see him get a healthy season so far, because he's just been lurking injuries the last 2 years. But I think the best case scenario for him would unfortunately probably be an injury to somebody else. Like, I don't think they'll just give him a shot. I think it's going to have to come at the cost of some sort of injury. But yeah, he's been really impressive. It seems like all the guys in the pros have been really impressed with him, which I think is a good sign. But he's definitely been one of the younger guys to watch so far this spring.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to what you were saying about Stott, like it's definitely great to see, especially going into the season. He's talked about, last year how he was dealing with that. I think it was the elbow injury that was kind of throwing him off for, parts of the season. And, when you heard that, it's kind of like, worrisome because you don't know if it's gonna like carry over. But he kind of cleared that up at that point, and now it's kind of showing that okay, it's not affecting him anymore. And he's gonna be a huge X factor for this lineup for this season. I mean, I know people talk about Trey Turner, obviously Castellanos and stuff like that. But I mean, Stott, a guy who could draw walks like that constantly. I mean, that's huge for this lineup. So we're definitely going to need that. But you brought up names like Brian, Christian Arroyo, which I have gloated about him the last couple of episodes on this pod about him making the roster spot. And I'm like, hey, listen, I mean, if he's getting on base, he's making good contact, then I'm okay with that. If he goes for that last spot, I'm cool with it. So, but yeah, Cody Clemens, all those guys. I mean, they definitely have a really kind of maybe a better shot than some others, but it's just going to be interesting to see, and I definitely think it's going to be like a real battle like up until like the final day right before opening day. So I'm just like excited to see.
It's interesting for the opening day rosters because one of the most fun parts about that is they don't release it till the morning of game one. So like you won't know till 5 hours before game one like who's on the roster. So that's always kind of like a fun part of that because I mean I think those guys know, but like it's kind of nice for us not to know. It's fun, but yeah, I don't know. It's tough because I don't think they want to lose Clemens. I think they know if they don't put him on the roster, another team will probably give him a shot. But at the same time, it seems to me like they really want a right-handed bat. So that's where I think a guy can step in, maybe like a Buddy Kennedy, especially if he looks okay in the outfield. But yeah, I would still say it's probably Clemens' job to lose because realistically, it's a 3-week placeholder for once Weston Wilson's healthy. So I think they know if they can sort of just use him for like 3 weeks, Clemens, and then if he's playing really well, then I think Wilson's going to have to earn it back. But there's definitely options, which is nice because there's been some years past where we've been like crawling for that last spot, and there's been some names that should not have been on a major league roster the last few years.
Yeah, there were definitely some rough years in there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is too, you brought up, it's like just the right-handed bat. Like we have a good amount of lefties, but it's also like, okay, if we have another right-handed bat in there, that doesn't hurt as well. And I've been preaching that. I preached that all offseason, looking for that move by Dombrowski. It's like, okay, we got this solidified right-handed bat and stuff like that can come after Castellanos, whatever. Like obviously we don't know what we're gonna get from JT, those type of guys. So like I said, if it's a guy that, a right-handed bat that's dominant, that works too. I mean, I guess we could talk a little bit about the bullpen as well. I mean, Alvarado, been playing really well, and especially, if I know Strom said he's feeling a little bit better, but I don't know like how that's gonna progress over like the next week or two. If it comes back and bothers him or whatever. But a guy like Alvarado coming into this year, he struggled a lot last year. It's great to see him kind of like going through the motions and getting better, overall these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a guy that I think very much went into the offseason saying that he needs to change something because last year wasn't up to his standards at all. And I mean, everybody knows that. He's been, he's been a great pitcher for us. It's still one of the better trades that we've made over the last few years. But seeing his and like, listen, I try not to take too much into spring training stats because it is spring training, but if there's a guy like him who's now up to like 15 strikeouts in 6 innings with a 0 ERA and he hit 102.5 on March 15th, like that's a really good sign. So I went back and looked, and I don't think he's ever hit. I haven't seen him hit 102.5 with the Phillies ever in his career. So for him to be doing that on March 15th is some nasty stuff. So yeah, it's a big opportunity for him. And I don't think they're going to rush Strom. I don't think there's really any reason to. But it does seem like if he needed to be healthy for opening day, he can be. It doesn't seem like it's anything serious there. I know they said he threw from, I think, 75 feet yesterday. So I assume they'll get him maybe a bullpen coming up soon. But it's a big chance for Alvarado because Alvarado immediately jumps to the most reliable lefty now with no Strom. So you need some good innings from him over the first month. And I think it's big for him to get off to a hot start because we've seen, how he can just kind of just like spiral out of nowhere. And that's not really on a game to game basis. That's in like an inning. And we've just seen how that goes. But then we've seen him have like really awesome weeks. And then the next week is just like he can't throw a strike. So I think for him, it's really just like finding that consistency. But I think throwing 102.5 on March 15th is a good start.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with just his physical shape. Like they had the clip from
Lost a ton of weight.
I think it was last season. Yeah. They had the clip from I think it was last season during the in-game interview. He's like, "I'm fat. Like I'm a fat guy." Like that's just. And this year he looks more athletic.
He does. He basically said he feels like he's in the best shape of his career.
Right.
And he looks it because I don't want to call this guy fat, obviously, but like he wasn't, he wasn't in the best shape for a lot of the years that he was with the Phillies. But he just looks healthy out there, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I think he has a really big opportunity now this season.
Yeah, and the other thing with him
it's going to be awesome.
He's gonna be great. The other thing with him is like just keeping the emotions in check sometimes. Like we obviously love seeing the emotions from him. It probably helps in the clubhouse, stuff like that. I get it. But like on the mound, it's like there's times where he's seeing it's like, okay, you can tell he's getting a little bit out of control. He's not hitting his spots consistently. It's like, there's got to be a time when you can turn it on and off. You know what I'm saying? So, but obviously, we'd still want to see that, the emotion and whatnot. I think just
you don't want any of that to go away because
exactly.
When you're a bullpen pitcher, you need something to fuel you because I still think throwing out of the bullpen is probably one of the harder things to do in baseball.
Yes,
just having to come into a tie game in the 8th inning and having to get out of it. It's really hard. And if it takes Jose Alvarado to have another moment with Dom Smith like he did a few years ago and scream into his glove when he gets it. Like you've seen it with Strom though, like that's what makes Strom like himself is he's and I've always said this in the nicest way about Strom. He's a lunatic. Like, but it comes to a point where you have to be if you're a reliever. So listen, if that's what Alvarado wants to still be, and if that works, then by all means.
That's what a lot of the bullpen greats always did. Jonathan Papelbon was a nutcase. Exactly. Who was the guy? Was it Romero that would smash the Red Bull can
the Red Bull on it? Just you got to get in a routine, and it's just it's a routine, and it's weird, man, because it's 7 innings of you're sitting there making jokes with all your teammates in the bullpen, and you get a call, and within 10 minutes you're out on the mound in a tie game facing Juan Soto, and you can't allow a hit. Like it's bizarre. Like you have to be just in your own zone when you're a reliever.
For sure. Yeah. And, showing some love to the other guys, guys like, Jordan Romano, who's, new this year and stuff like that, coming off the injury, everybody has, high hopes for him because he's one of the big signings that Dombrowski made this offseason. But he's going to be definitely battling it out with like guys like Orion Kirkering, who, myself, I'm like ready for him to kind of like take control this year and run away with that closing, spot in the bullpen, because I just feel like, if he's consistent, he's hitting the fastball, and he's already got that sweeper. It's just like if he can stay consistent, it would be great for the bullpen. And I'm hoping he takes that spot at the end of the bullpen.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a big year for him. I think just getting more of the consistency, like you said, because he has the stuff to be really good. And it's the matter of more now just continuing to use his fastball a lot. Because when he first came up, he was very sweeper heavy, and it was good for the first 2 months when everyone didn't know who he was. And then
when they don't have tape on you, it's a lot easier.
People started to figure it out, and they say, oh, he throws his sweeper 95% of the time. Then they're sitting there waiting for it. So it's the matter of him using the fastball more. But I think they have a good chance to have a nice core at the top. I think having a Strom, having an Alvarado, having a Romano, and having an Orion who continues to grow, I think that's a really nice top four. I think it gets a little more once you get
Dicey.
past there. But I like what I've seen from Joe Ross. I don't think you're going to see many big innings from Tanner Banks, but I've seen a lot worse mop-up guys for the Phillies than Tanner Banks over the last, 5-10 years. So I think they have a shot to be a nice little bullpen this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the main things last year, I mean, and we saw it from the beginning of the playoffs, like that one series, the bullpen just killed us. Just absolutely killed us. And now it's kind of explained away with injuries and things like that, but you have to have a strong, at least top couple of relievers coming out of the pen, because these guys aren't going, like, we're fortunate to have a great pitching staff. But if we let up 3 runs in 5 innings, yeah, exactly. If we let up 3 runs in 5 innings, it's like, okay, that we can have a little bit of breathing room, but they got to be able to close it down. You know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting to see who makes it and who doesn't.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, and I've always said this, is I think a lot of people that watch the Phillies fall into the camp of they only watch the Phillies and they don't watch a lot of other baseball. And they see the bullpen blow a lead once a week, and they think it's like the worst bullpen in the league, when like I would love for people to go watch some other teams' bullpens. A guy like a Tanner Banks is a lot of teams probably like second best reliever heading into the year.
Right.
So this is still a good bullpen. But yeah, they just have an unbelievable staff. And I think that's why I've been kind of sitting here and like, there's no reason in the world why they shouldn't win at least 90 games this year. Because the staff is just so good. And especially, once you get Andrew Painter, and if that all works out like it should, then you have a 5 of Wheeler, Sanchez, Nola, and Luzardo and Painter, and then maybe you move Ranger to the bullpen. And I think we'll maybe get into that a little more, but sort of like what you do there. Because I'm not a huge fan of the 6-man. I just never really have been. And I don't think Wheeler or Nola is either. I don't think either of them like the 6-man rotation. But this is the most depth that I've ever seen them have, especially in the starting rotation. And I don't want to even get excited about him, which I've already gotten a little too excited about him. But listen, man, I really liked what I've seen so far from Taijuan Walker this spring, and I'm not I'm not expecting him to go out and have like a 3 flat ERA. But I mean, his velocity's up 5 miles an hour than it was from last spring. He was sitting around 87 last spring, and it's back up. He looks healthy. I'm not saying he's going to be in the rotation because he's not, but hey, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to count on him because like I don't want to count on anything. But even if he looks good and then you try and deal him, but I think there's maybe something a little left because he's in a lot better shape and he's in a better position right now than he was this time last spring.
Definitely. No, I agree.
We can't. And I know nobody wants to talk about it.
Am I talking to Rob Thompson? Am I hearing from Rob Thompson now? Like the words?
I swear you're not. No, you're not.
It's like, hey, I get it. And I see your point on that. And listen, I mean, if he does great, he does decent, so be it. I'm okay with it. As long as, he's doing what he's got to do for the team. But, building off of what you were just talking about with the starting rotation, we discussed it in last week's episode. And I actually posted a clip from that episode about it. But there was a huge discussion about, if, Andrew Painter, because, Rob Thompson reported that, like, if he were to come up, it'd be kind of be like July-ish, like around that time. Who do you, like, if they were to, like, send somebody to the bullpen from the starting rotation, like, who is it that you send to the bullpen? Because we were kind of discussing it. We're kind of figuring out, it's like, we're kind of feeling Ranger, just because we've trusted him a little bit more in that spot and he's been in those situations, like, where do you go at that point?
Yeah, so I think the easy answer is Ranger,
Yeah.
but I'm also not 100% sure that Ranger's going to want to go to the bullpen in a contract year. Um,
It's true.
so I think, and I think there's only two guys it'll be between. It'll be between Luzardo and Ranger. That
Mhm.
like you're not sending Zach Wheeler to the bullpen, you're not sending Christopher Sanchez to the bullpen, and you're not sending Aaron Nola to the bullpen.
Yeah.
No.
So it's between those two. And if they went 6 for a little bit, I wouldn't hate it. Just for like a week or two. Like, and listen, he says that now. I don't see them going 6-man rotation for 4 months. But it's Ranger, I think, because I think we've seen that he can do it. But realistically, it does come down to him wanting to do it as well. But at the same time, while I say about the whole contract year thing, I don't see a situation where the Phillies go to Ranger and they say, we need you to throw out of the bullpen, and he says no. And I still think it'll be like a spot start kind of thing. If they bring Painter up, I don't expect him to pitch like every 5 days right away. I think it can maybe be like you get him in like once every 8-9 games, because I don't think they want him to come up and just throw every 5 days yet, because I think they know how much more years they have of him. And I think they want to save a lot of those innings for later in the season. Like they want, if the playoffs started and he looks really good, he's going to start a game. Like I don't see them taking him into the bullpen if he looks really good as a starter. They don't want him to be a reliever. They want him to be a starter. So if he goes into October with a 2 ERA as a starter, like you can't take him out of the rotation. So that's when I think you get to October, and I think you probably run a 4 in the for that, and you would have Wheeler, Sanchez, Nola, Painter, and then you would have a Luzardo, Ranger both out of the bullpen, which would be awesome.
Just hearing that is like,
yeah, it's awesome, man, and that falls back on just the amount of depth they have now.
Yeah.
They have a top 2. They have a top 2 starting rotation in baseball, and there's absolutely an argument for them to be the best. And I'm not including the best pitching prospect in all of baseball in there. So they're in a really good spot for their rotation this year.
Yeah, and it was funny. So I was watching the broadcast the other day, and it was Cole Hamels' first broadcast, which he did a pretty good job.
He did. Yeah, I was impressed by him the other day. I think the first game there was some nerves, definitely.
yeah.
Definitely.
But the first few games after that, I actually thought he was really good. He
was good.
Seemed like extremely natural in there. And I think it's nice once again to have a guy that really knows the game, because we love McCarthy, but having a guy that played for 15 years in the league
and the best era of Phillies baseball.
Exactly. And everybody loves him. Like he was really good so far.
So he made a point that because they started talking about Painter a little bit, and they were showing him throwing on the backfields and stuff like that earlier in the week and throughout the spring. And they said that he was going to get to do live BP, which he threw yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
And Hamels said that they're actually treating Painter the same way they did to him the year that they anticipated he was going to come up. So Hamels said that the year they were going to call him up, it was kind of understood, like, hey, like, we're going to limit you a lot in spring.
Yeah.
You're really not going to go into games. You're going to do some live BP. You're going to work out every day and all that good stuff. But we're not going to like make you throw innings. Like, it's pointless, because we're going to need you at the top level at some point this summer, whether it's July-ish or whether it's late August, whether it's late June, who knows? So I found it really interesting that arguably one of the best Phillies homegrown pitchers there's been in the last 25 years is getting the exact same treatment as Painter is right now.
Yeah. And I think it's a thing you'll start to see once he's in AAA. I don't expect to see Painter pitching in the 8th inning much, or the 7th inning much. I think it's going to be a lot of early on. I think it's going to be a lot of 3, 4, 5-inning outings. And then I think once he gets closer, I think they'll start to add, maybe an inning or two. But I think one of the things is if you have a guy that's going to be ready, there's no point in wasting innings in the minors, because if he's ready, he might as well be in the pros. So I don't expect Andrew Painter to throw 110 innings throughout the first 5 months of AAA season. He's just not going to do it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, no, Painter, just the thought of it so far, it's like, it's exciting because it's just like a homegrown player.
Yeah.
It's just
and
like
it's
number one prospect.
We haven't had this a lot. Like it's a situation where we're like, oh, this guy's like actually finally working out. Like it's crazy. And then you see the guys behind him, and this is the best the Phillies farm system has been in a while. They have a lot of good guys. I mean, man, I was watching the spring breakout game the other day, which I love. It was
great.
I could watch a whole season of just all these prospects.
I agree.
I enjoyed that game more than I enjoyed any other spring training game this year. But I mean, man, I'm just like looking up ages of these guys, and like I know a good amount about most of them, but I mean, there's these guys. These guys were born in 2007 and 2008.
Oh my gosh,
Eduardo Tait, he was born in 2007. Like I looked it up.
Wow.
I looked it up the other day. Like, dude, I'm like, this is nuts. Like, and it was like the same thing. Like when I interviewed Rincones, it was like, I'm expecting like, if you do these interviews, like they're very like media trained
up
and stuff like this. And Rincones was just like sitting there on his phone. Like, it's just like these prospects are just like, you just forget like how young these guys are. Like Adam Miller can't have a beer yet. Andrew Painter can't, like, it's just like none of these guys can do it. Like it's nuts, man. Eduardo Tait can't vote. Like it's absurd. Like the ages of these guys, and we're sitting here. It's so funny to think about because we're sitting here on our couch and we're watching this breakout game and we're yelling about all these guys. And then you go and remember that they're like 16, 17, 18 years old. Like it's just absolutely bizarre.
And you're sitting there, you're just like, listen, I'm depending on you to like come here in the future and like this winning culture that we're building right now.
Like it's bizarre.
It's
some of that stuff is just sickening. I watch Painter and I watch Miller because I went down to spring training and I got to see Miller and I got to see Crawford, and I'm like, man, I'm watching the future of this team, and they're 4 years younger than me, 5 years younger than me. It's like, this is gross.
And it's
like I'm in the stands drinking a beer, and these guys are like, oh yeah, what count am I working here? Like, holy crap.
I'm 22, so it's like I'm finally starting to get to the age where I'm like, my God, these guys are younger than me now. Like it's insane, man. Like the fact that the dude catching for the Phillies the other day was 5 years younger than me is just absurd to think about.
Yeah. Some big shoes to fill when he
exactly. I don't want him to know this, but my whole life relies on you working out, and you're like 17 years old. Like, it's just bizarre, man. It's absolutely insane.
That's great. So going off of more spring training stuff. So I'm gonna tell you, if you're Rob Thompson right now, this moment, you have opening day is about to be tomorrow, like the first game of the season, right?
Yeah.
What would be your lineup, like your potential like lineup prediction going into the first game of the season, if you had to choose today?
So top four, I think for me right now is set. Trey 1, Bryce 2, Alec Boehm 3, Schwarber 4.
Okay.
I think Castellanos will hit 5th. I think Max Kepler will hit 6th. I think JT will hit 7th. Stott 8, Marsh 9. I was very pro whatever they wanted to do with Kepler. Honestly, at the beginning of spring, I thought he was going to be a little more back in the lineup, and I thought maybe by like May he would sort of move up, because I think all these guys at their best, Max Kepler can hit high up in this lineup. But it seems like he's going to be in that 6. I think they want to split up Nick and JT. So I think Max Kepler will be in there. I've already talked myself into stupid Max Kepler situations this year. One of my hotter ones so far is that he's going to be in the All-Star game in July.
He
But
might be if he stays
dude,
healthy.
swing looks good, man. His swing looks good.
Yeah.
It looks way better than it ever did in Minnesota. He's a lot shorter to the ball now. It doesn't look like he's trying to kill every baseball anymore. He's got some nice potential. And I think a lot of people didn't like it. I don't think anybody didn't like the signing of Kepler. I think people didn't like that it wasn't somebody better.
Yeah.
A huge name that everybody knows, because you know how this works. If somebody that watches 20 games a year doesn't know who the player is they signed, they're automatically a really bad baseball player.
Exactly.
So
There you go. Yep.
I was actually very pro when they signed him. He's been one of my favorite fantasy guys the last few years. But I think he's got a shot to hit some nice homers this year. I think he could get into the 25-30 range, because I think he's going to finally have the chance to play every day. And I think there's been situations where he's hit like 15 to 20 homers as like sort of like a platoon guy for Minnesota. I think if you give him an everyday shot, I don't think there's any reason why he can't put like 25 to 30 over the wall.
Especially in a hitter-friendly ballpark, too.
Exactly.
I don't know much about
field.
Minnesota's ballpark. Yeah, exactly. I don't know much about Minnesota's ballpark or how the ball carries there.
It's not the most friendly right field.
Okay.
He'll have an easier time hitting here than he did in Minnesota.
So are you a big proponent of the righty-lefty, like, alternating, like, because to me, I've said it to Pete before, I've said it numerous times, I think that sometimes people lose the feel, and I think Rob Thompson does a very good job of managing by feel to an extent. But I think sometimes we put way too much stock into right, left, right, left, right, left. When if you have a guy, like if you don't want to split up Nick and JT, if you want to bat them back to back, it's not the worst thing in the world if you're put into that situation.
No, and it's not because you would have Schwarber at the 4, so it's not like you're going like righty, righty, righty.
Exactly.
I definitely don't want to go like 4 lefties, 5 righties.
Sure.
I'm like iffy about it, honestly. Because honestly, I think the lineup just like ends up making the most sense this year, and it just ends up being in that lefty righty. Like
yes.
if
Agreed.
if you get a big season from JT, then I don't think they would care to hit him right behind Castellanos. But I think they want to give Max a shot to at least be further up in the lineup. So I've never really been like that set on it either way. I will say though, I didn't want Harper to stay at 3 if Trey went to the leadoff, because I thought it was kind of pointless.
I agree.
I thought it was kind of pointless of moving Trey to the leadoff and not sliding Bryce up. So as far as that, maybe. But yeah, no, I've never really been a huge like guy.
I guess because when I started watching baseball, like with Charlie Manuel, it was just like I bat the best guys in the best spots because I have to.
He was all and exactly. if you said the word vibes to Charlie Manuel, he wouldn't know what you're talking about. But that's what he did. Like
exactly.
He was the vibes. If Jason Worth was hitting better than Ruiz, then Worth's hitting 4 spots ahead of him. Like it's just
right.
And I think this year, my one hope for this year is I hope if it's a righty on the mound, I hope they move Marsh up a little bit, because I think Marsh has earned to hit maybe around the 7 range.
Yes.
Against a righty. But other than that, I do kind of hope they stick with the order. And listen, if you go through 2 months of Trey in the leadoff and they're 10 games under 500, then you get Schwarber back in there the second you can. Because you go back to what's worked, and I've always been very, very pro Schwarber leadoff, because I think it's an immediate threat for you to go up 1-0. But I was very ready for this being the year to try something different. I think there's 2 really big things for Trey there for me. It's one, I think it forces him to have to be more selective at the plate because he talked the other day and he said he wants to get his walk rate up higher again. And I think getting his walks up and that's, I think we all know the chase rate thing. If you're a Phillies fan and you haven't heard the word chase rate over the last years, you're insane. But I think getting him in the leadoff spot just makes him become more selective. And it's also just frees him up on the bases. There's no reason he shouldn't be stealing at least like 35 bags a year. He's one of the fastest players in baseball. And I think a big portion of that was because he had Schwarber ahead of him. So if you can get, Trey just freed up on the bases, I think you absolutely have to try it.
Yeah, and the way that I always explained it to Pete, even when we were like before we were doing the podcast, we would just call each other. And I was okay with Schwarber in the leadoff because when you look at the numbers and you look at the record of games you don't lead Schwarber off, but he is in the lineup versus the opposite way around, like our numbers as a team are infinitely better with him in the leadoff spot. Now, there was a ton more of a sample size with him in the leadoff spot, but at the same time, I totally agree with you. This has to be the year where you're like, we need to change, and it doesn't have to be a culture change or anything like that, but on the field, something has to change. If you're not going to, because you got to keep the core, but if you're not going to really shake up the roster, you have to change the approach in some form or fashion.
Yeah, and I will say, and I know we were talking about the quote a little bit from Kevin Long, sort of about the approach. And while I think a lot of people won't like that quote, he has a point. It's really hard. It's really hard for a pitching coach to go tell Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and Nick Castellanos and these guys that have been in the league for 10, 12, 13 years. It's really hard to go up to them and tell them to just change their whole approach at the plate. Like, they're not going to do it. I don't care what you tell Nick Castellanos. He's not going to change his approach. Like, Trey,
you could tell him the world is going to end and he would not change his approach. So
no, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. You could tell him the world's going to end and he probably wouldn't care. The dude is just the most straight line guy. But yeah, it's up to them, man. Like, and that's what I keep saying. It's the last few years, like, you can do the whole Rob Thompson this and Kevin Long that all you want. Like, you have the second highest payroll in baseball. Like, it's going to come down to a point where your lineup just has to figure it out. And I think one of the hardest parts about last year, and another reason why I think they switched this lineup around, is because there was just no protection behind Bryce. And
they didn't have to pitch to him if they didn't want to.
They were walking him on 5 pitches every single at bat of the Mets series because they knew they didn't have to face him. Because then they had a guy in Bohm at the time who couldn't hit a beach ball during the playoffs last year. And it's now you get, Harper on base, and then you get into a Bohm who it's whatever you think about him, but he has a good on base percentage. He still hits for average. And then after that, you have Schwarber. So it's like there's now threats behind Bryce.
Yeah, and I feel like, all of this stems to, like, for me at least, when I was watching, when you were talking about, like, there's no protection for Bryce and stuff like that, is like they were trying to pitch around him, but there was times where it was like you could tell he was forcing to try to get things going. And I don't know if that was whether, like, he was just trying to get swings out there, trying to stay alive and at bats and stuff like that. But just you could tell there was times where it was like he was trying to do like too much just to try to get things going because nobody else was really doing anything. And going back to the point with Trey Turner, for me at least, just like I could just sense that it's like there's times where he's trying to do too much, and I've explained this before to Henry, and I'm just waiting for the moment where it's like, dude, we know that, like, you could be a great leadoff hitter. We know that you can get on base. We know that you can steal bases. Like, we know you can do all that. We just, like, you just got to lock in. You got to get out of your own head, and you just got to go out there and play your game because we know that he could be that player. We've seen it before. You know what I'm saying? And not saying that, like, he's this whole time he's been in his own head or whatever, but, like, there's just moments where you can see where it's like you're kind of holding back a little bit, and we know it's like you can do better than that. You know what I'm saying? And that's going to be important, if he is in that leadoff spot for us this year.
Yeah, he needs to just he needs to find the old Trey.
Yes.
He needs to find the consistency. He needs to understand that he doesn't need to go out and hit 30 home runs.
No.
He needs to use that other side of the field more too, because that's where Trey's been at his best. And last year for Trey was, I think, a career low for opposite field hits.
Mhm.
And that, like, that's just where he's been the best in the past. Like he's not ripping 120-mile-an-hour exit velocity all the way to the wall. Like it's ropes down the line and just like finding grass.
Yeah.
If I would rather Trey hit 315 this year with 12 home runs than go out and
Fine with that.
hit 285 with 25 homers. Like,
Exactly.
Agreed.
if he can give me a 310, 315 season out of the leadoff spot and carry that into the playoffs, that's huge, man. Because one of the biggest issues with the last few playoffs is Bryce needs one more guy. Like,
Yep.
if he
Yes.
had one more guy in that Diamondback series, they go back to the World Series. If they had one more guy in that Mets series, they probably win the Mets series. They need one more guy to play how they should. And you can afford guys going through slumps. Like, you can afford Nick Castellanos going through a slump in a playoff series. It's not good for you, but you can afford it. Like, you
Yeah.
can afford a JT, but you can't afford your star shortstop. And like, you need Trey. You need Trey to go out in the playoffs next year and hit like 310 in the playoffs, because
Mm-hmm.
if he gave you that in 2023, once again, they would have been back in the World Series. And it's just Bryce is incredible, but you can't win baseball games by yourself. I've never seen a team win the World Series where there's only been one guy that's been on a tear. It's just everybody has to be clicking, and it needs to be Trey, because if you get into a series next year and Harper's humming at the plate and he looks awesome, Trey, it's going to be really hard to beat the Phillies.
Yeah. I mean, coming back to your point, if you need a guy to help Bryce, because I was gonna make the point. You move all the way back to the Diamondback series at the end of not last season, the one prior. It's like it wasn't really his fault. Like you kind of put it on him as well because he was one of the players, but you can't really because he didn't see a good pitch.
No, he didn't. And it's not his fault, because if you have a guy like, once again, like Bone behind him, or just that, like that playoff series last year, there's no reason to pitch to him. And now I think it's Trey is going to see, they would rather look at Trey than look at Bryce. So I think leadoff is opening up a big opportunity for Trey, because I just think it frees him up more. I think he's going to see more pitches, and I think it just gives him a chance to play more like himself. Because I think one of his biggest things the last few years is it almost feels like when he goes up there, he's like, crap, like I have to get on base because Harper's behind me. But like now it's just like, go out and hit leadoff and just hit a single. Like, go out, hit a single and just run around the bases. Like, I think he loses a lot of the pressure now that he's not hitting right in front of Harper. Or I guess he'll still technically hit in front of Harper. But I think leading off the game and not having a guy like Schwarber in front of you, where if Schwarber, gets on and then Trey's like, man, I got to like, it just relieves a lot of pressure from him, I think.
Yeah,
Totally.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting to see. Like I said, sometimes a change doesn't hurt, but like obviously if it go back to it, then we go back to it. So it is what it is, and we'll see what happens. But before we get into our next segment, let me say hello to our friends at Philly Goat. As we look ahead to the 2025 season, make sure you're prepared with new Philly sports gear. Go to website phillygoat.com to get new Philly sports merch and use the code BTBPOD for 10% off your next order. Beyond the Bank is proud to be an affiliate with Philly Goat. As always, go Phils. So going into our next segment, more of a relaxed thing that we're gonna do today, especially having you on, Luke. Henry, I'm gonna let you take over, and we're gonna kind of do more of a quick question type of thing. Rapid fire. Probably won't be as like crazy quick, but just to ask you a couple questions and get your insight from it. So, Henry, I'll let you take over, and you can go ahead.
All right. So starting off with the first one, if you had to choose one seat in the bank, where would it be? This can be, you could just generalize upper level, maybe Hall of Fame club, maybe you're a standing room guy. What do you prefer?
I will say I really like the Hall of Fame club. I think having the view from up top a little bit is nice. And listen, I think sitting down in that Diamond Club is awesome. But personally, I actually think the view's better from the Hall of Fame club than I do the Diamond Club. So I'll say the Hall of Fame club, but I think the most underrated view is the 200 section of left field right under Harry the Case. I love sitting up there.
I'm sitting up there for a family game that I'm going to with a bunch of family members. So the second one is what is your favorite food place at the ballpark?
I always go Bulls Barbecue in left field.
Bulls Barbecue, okay.
Interesting. I have yet to get anything from there yet.
Gotta get the pulled pork.
It's pretty good. I've tried before. It's good.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I have a partial plan, so I'm hoping I can just sample a little of everything this year.
Do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, but how early do you get to games? Whether you're tailgating or what time do you walk in the gates?
We're tailgating. I like to be in there for when like they come out. I would say if it's a 7:00 start, I think I'm probably in by 6:30 usually.
Okay.
If we're tailgating a 4:00 Saturday game, we'll probably get there around 11 a.m.
Okay.
Parking lot 10, 11 a.m. We're doing we started a few years ago. My family, we do a huge tailgate. It basically started off as one for my birthday because it's at the end of March. So we always did it like the beginning of April, like the first big home Saturday game. But I think it's a 4:00 start this year. I think we said we're going to get over around like 9 something.
Nice.
So if it's a night game, no tailgate, I would say around a half hour before the game.
Okay. That leads into the next question. Actually, which lot do you park in?
We go in.
Like what do you prefer?
Detailed, very detailed.
We go. We go.
Well,
lot
we don't want
N.
anybody following him now. Like,
no, listen.
Well, no.
I'll tell you exactly where we are. We go lot N, top shelf, like the side part of Jetro. It's like on top of the M lot. That upper section. It's the RV lot for Eagles games. That's our spot. We love it up there. We go there every year.
Nice. All right, the last one we got. What jersey is the one that you rock when you go to games?
It depends. I'll tell you this: if Aaron Nola is pitching, I have a pinstripe LSU Aaron Nola jersey that I usually rock.
That is clean.
It's an awesome jersey.
I like that.
But it's usually between Harper, Trey, white jersey. I have too many jerseys.
I have so many. It's unbelievable.
The deepest pull I've ever worn to a game. I have 2 Scott Kingery jerseys. So one
more people out there with them than we think. I'm sure.
And listen, this one's a sicko pull. I have a navy blue University of Arizona Scott Kingery jersey that I ordered from China like 7 years ago. I'll tell you what, that's a heater of a jersey. So that used to be my go-to like deep pull jersey. But yeah, I would say Trey or Bryce. It's usually Bryce. It's usually Bryce.
I love that pinstripe Aaron Nola. I'm an LSU fan for college football.
It's
when
awesome.
I watch, like I'm not super into it, but no, yeah, that's wow. Yeah, that's that's Scott Kingery college jersey.
I got a hell of a lineup.
Go ahead.
Last year when they rolled out those terrible Fanatics jerseys, they were trying to get the stuff off of the shelf from what they had the year before. So they were putting them all on sale. I got a Castellanos pinstripe. I got a Bryce pinstripe. I got a Harper and Castellanos and Turner. I got like a bunch, and I had the Sunday tickets last year, so every Sunday they wore the cream jersey. So I was like, let me just get a Bryce one. I
My
have
favorite
throwbacks.
jersey.
I got all kinds of. Oh yeah, well, it's grown on me because I was there for Bedlam at the bank. So up until then, I was like, oh, this is kind of. It's just, to me, it just wasn't all that. Like it wasn't what people. I don't know, but I saw in that moment, I was like. It's more iconic than I ever could have thought it was. So I had to get it.
Yeah, there's always superstition with me with like jerseys. It's like, I'm like, all right, when I went to the game last time and they won, what jersey was I wearing? I might wear that same jersey again. So it's like I got the Schwarber jersey, I got the Harper jersey. It's just like I got to decide which one, man.
Yeah, that's the
You
thing.
always got to feel it out.
So like once they get to the playoffs, and I will say it'll be a little different this year because I think I'm gonna be more at the games for Crossing Broad this year. But if I'm at home and the playoffs start, it's one jersey the whole playoffs. It's nothing else. It's I sit down and I choose because a few years ago I did the Bryce and they lost to the Diamondbacks. I was like, all right, I'm going to try something different this year. I think I did the Trey jersey last year and they lost in the first round. I won't do that again this year for the playoffs. I got to try out the Castellanos one maybe for this year.
I had the Castellanos the year they made the World Series. And I was like, this thing is hot. I got to keep going.
Yeah, I've been waiting for a while, and I just need them to announce his number because the second I know his number, it's an instant buy for Andrew Painter. I've been saying since they drafted him that I will get this kid's jersey the second he comes to the pros.
Yeah, there's no way he wears 76 or 79 or whatever in the big leagues.
He'll be an instant bust if he runs out there in like 77.
Yeah.
There's no shot.
You can't wear a lineman's number as a pitcher. You know what I mean? Like it's impossible.
Yeah. All right. So we'll pause on the question because we do have one more that we'll save for like probably the end of the podcast. But I want to move into the next block. I want to talk about Jimmy Rollins because it was announced a couple of days ago that he will be inducted into the Phillies Wall of Fame this year. I'm pretty sure it's the game on August 1st.
August 1st. I think it's Saturday.
Saturday or Friday, I think, but it's really exciting news, really awesome, much deserving, and I can't wait. And I think it's also what was the other one that's getting inducted to the Wall of Fame? I think it was Ed Wade. Yeah. Ed Wade, yes. So that's also going to be a cool moment. But I wanted to bring up Jimmy Rollins just because like I'm a huge Jimmy Rollins fan myself. Growing up, and I just think it's going to be an awesome moment, really cool moment.
Yeah, it is. It's cool to see the start of all the 08 guys getting in because I think Pat Burrell is the only one in right now. He got inducted a while ago. But this is like the first like big name from that core that'll be in there. I can't imagine Utley, Howard, Hamels, Ruiz, Victorino or that farther. And honestly, I was a bit surprised, and I can't remember off the top of my head. No, I don't think they did this, but I think they're going to have eventually, I think they're going to have some sort of like 08 ceremony kind of thing because I'd be shocked. I think a lot of those guys are going to be on there. But yeah, no, I think it's very appropriate for Jimmy to be the first one of the core because, I mean, listen, if you think Phillies baseball, you think Schmidt, Carlton, Utley, Rollins, Howard, and he didn't win one yet, Albert Harper. And like I would say those are probably the 6 guys that you think of. And it's awesome for Jimmy. It's really going to be an awesome moment.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, like you said, a majority of those guys will get in. Yeah. Now, I don't know if Wilson Valdez will make it in or anything like that, but like all those guys are just locked. And you see a guy like Roy Halladay, who unfortunately obviously passed away. He's one of my favorite pitchers, probably my favorite pitcher of all time. And Carlos Ruiz was the one who inducted him. And I think that like like you said, when you think Phillies baseball, you think like if I had to sum up my Phillies fandom as a child, it was a double play from Utley to Rollins to Howard. Like that's I've watched that hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. So those guys getting in is amazing.
For 10 years, it was their bread and butter. It was one of the It's funny because it was one of the easiest plays for them was the 4-6-3 or the 6-4-3. They just never missed it. That's. But I mean, listen, man, and this is no flack to the guys from 1980, but I'm not 45 years old. When I think Phillies legends, the first three I think of are Rollins, Utley, Howard. It's just that's just what it is for me. So it's really going to be awesome. It'll be a nice night. I have a feeling a lot of the 08 guys will probably be there that night.
Yes.
So that'll be cool. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's just a cool moment. I feel like, for me, it's like, like growing up, like, it's kind
these
of
are the guys that we watched growing up.
Yeah.
Like this is the first start of the guys that we really got into Phillies baseball with. The Rollins, the Utley, the Howard, the Hamels, like all these guys, like these guys. And in 10, 15 years, it'll be the same thing for the people growing up now with Harper and Wheeler and Nola and like guys like that. And it'll make it all better once they eventually get one. So it'll be fun. It'll be cool to see the old guys come back because it definitely hits me like every time they come back. I'm like, because like you don't see them all together a lot. Like these guys don't really hang out all the time. Like everyone's schedule's different. They have families. They're all over the world. Utley's in London. Like they don't get to be together a lot. So for them to hopefully all be back together on August 1st, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try to go to that game. I'm excited for it. It's going to be an awesome moment. So before we kind of wrap things up, like I said, we have one more final question for you.
Cool.
So this is one you're definitely going to have to think about a little bit. So I'll ask this one. So far up to this point of your Phillies fan career, what is the most memorable live moment for you? So any game that you've gone to live that you can really think of.
So easy. I was at Game 3 of the NLDS 2022. So I got the Reese bat spike. I was actually in that left field 200 section that I was saying earlier for that.
That is,
dude. I'll tell you this right now. I have never heard a crack of the bat so loud than that home run. It was like I could have closed my eyes in that place, and the second I heard it, I would have knew it was a home run. Like, and it was one of those things. And like, yeah, we had a few beers in us that day. But it was one of those moments where whether you were dead sober or the complete opposite side, you blacked out instantly. I don't remember what I did when it happened. I don't like it was everybody was just like beers going in the air and like I like you just don't know. I was there with my brother. Like I have one video of like right after it. And the craziest part about it was you get to that and that whole thing happens and we finally start to, chill out and not chill out. That's the wrong word because we were going nuts the rest of the game. Yeah. But like everyone's head started to hurt for a few minutes after we were going nuts and you could tell. And people like were kind of starting to sit down for a little bit. And then Harper just hit the freaking moon.
I was going to say, yeah.
And we were like, and then it was chaos the rest of the game. So easily awesome. That one. Easily that game.
That's awesome. Pete, what's yours? I don't think I've ever asked you this, to be honest.
Yeah, nah, it's tough for me just because like obviously the last couple of years, like I've had like obviously a lot of great moments now, especially like 2022. I actually went to Game 4 of the NLDS, the next day or whatever, and that was like an amazing moment for me just because that was my first like playoff, experience of like any type of sport.
The Reese bat spike was the first playoff homer that I've ever seen in person.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
like, man! Like
talk about setting the bar high.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's pretty hard to top that one. We went to 2023. We went to Game 1 of the wild card.
I went to that one. Yeah,
versus the Marlins. Really wish we were at Game 2. But Game 2 was so much better. But yeah, didn't get to any last year. But easily the Reese bat spike game. Like it's not even remotely close.
That whole playoff run, man. It's just memories after memories.
Well, and the crazy, like Mine is Bedlam at the Bank, and I got a great deal on tickets somehow. I was in like the 301 or so. Yeah, I was in like 301 or the section over right after that split. And I was hugging complete strangers.
Yeah.
And like all day, I'm miserable. It's wet outside. It's raining the whole time. Sir Anthony's spiking pitches before the plate.
Oh, man.
I'm like,
Good old Sir Anthony,
today
baby.
must not be the day. Yeah. I was like, today might not be the day. And
I'll never forget
sucks,
when he was.
It is what it is.
I'll never forget that when he was spiking pitches, and
I was getting nervous.
And he ran to the plate. I
because
vividly
I
remember
get
he
it.
ran to the front of the plate. I'm like, oh my god.
Like I get it. Like, yeah, he's a pitcher. He shouldn't be spiking pitches. But I was with like 5 or 6 people like screaming at him, and I'm like, "What do you want him to do? Everything's
Well,
so
yeah.
like
Well,
the other
that was
team's
the
doing
thing.
the same
It was
thing.
like,
Nobody can run
Yeah.
the bases. Everyone's slipping everywhere." First of all, and I'm happy they didn't because we never would have had the moment. But the fact that they didn't call that inning, I was
Yeah.
ready. And that's what I was the most mad about that day was the fact that they didn't call that inning when they saw. I mean, Sir Anthony literally couldn't even hold the baseball, and
No.
like
And
the
that was
umpires
the
were out
thing.
there like, keep going. Like
I felt bad for him because it was
Yeah.
like I could
There's
barely hold
nothing
my
he can do.
phone, my drink, all of
Nothing he
that.
can
I
do.
could barely hold any of that. I was like, there's no way these guys can pitch. And I was like, I literally said to my mom, and I said to the people that were behind us, because we just started talking like you do. And I was like, it's unsafe out there. Like these guys, like somebody's gonna slip on a base and tear their ACL. Like something's gonna happen, and we're gonna be like, and for the rest of our lives, we're gonna wonder what would have happened if they canceled this game. Would this guy have had, a busted knee or whatever?
And
like,
I will say, and man, sometimes I wish when I put my phone down, I wish I put it down, screen down when I didn't. Harper's at the plate. We're watching the thing. And I see a tweet from Todd Zalecki. And it says, "There's Bryce Harper's playoff moment." And I was like,
oh,
you got to be kidding me. So I'm sitting there and like I'm watching with my parents and I'm sitting there and I get it. And I'm just like, I'm like, oh my God. And they have no idea. I know they have no idea. And the second he made contact, like obviously I knew at that point. So I was like, like it was, man, that's one moment. I will say the 2 funniest moments that I've seen before it happened was the Harper Bedlam at the Bank. And once again, had my phone screen up and Eagles Super Bowl, the one that happened a month ago. It's 27-0. And I see the Eagles tweet in all caps, Smitty in all caps. And I'm like, that's game, isn't it? And then all of a sudden,
that's tough,
all of a sudden I hear Burkhart throwing the dagger and I'm like, oh, this game's over. The game is over.
That's great. Now, I will say, man, the build up to Harper's at bat for Bedlam at the Bank. I mean, I'm a weirdo and I'll listen to at least like 2 times a month of Joe Davis just like building that story
crazy, man,
of him going up to like just it just everything about it gives me chills.
You also go back and you look at it and it's like, yeah, like everybody obviously, and like nobody should remember it for anything else, but everyone's gonna remember it for the home run. But like before the home run, that was an unbelievable at bat. Like unreal at bat, like multiple pitches that he definitely could have swung at that he took right out of the zone and then just boom.
The one pitch that I always go back to was I think it was a slider and it's right at the bottom of the zone. It's right under the zone. And it was a frame and he just laid right off.
Oh, it
was like,
insane.
oh my God.
I thought he was rung up. I thought he was done.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. I know exactly what pitch you're talking about. I'll never forget
and that's the thing. I was shocked watching it back because from where I was, it looked like a ball. Like you could kind of tell. But watching it back and the TV angle, I'm like, I'm shocked at that the ref that the ump didn't call this a strike.
Yeah.
Like it was wild. I will never ever forget that.
And Smoltz kept saying on the broadcast, like, you can't miss a spot because he'll go the other way with it. And it's exactly what he did. And he kept saying it, exactly what it did. And just like that whole moment, just leading up to it, just like storybook ending. Basically, it's great. It's great.
Hopefully,
yeah, I mean that's
bigger
it's
moment this playoffs.
exactly. What else?
Because realistically, if he has a bigger moment this playoffs, then they probably win the World Series. Because it's
Yeah.
gonna be it's gonna be hard to top that unless it's basically to win the World Series.
Exactly. And if that moment happens, whew, I'll tell you, man, I will be I'll black out for probably 2 days.
Yeah, there we
go. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of discussion. It's been great. Again, Luke, we really appreciate you taking the time out of the day to be on here with us and chatting it up about Phillies baseball. It's been awesome, man.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Make sure to go out there and listen to Luke and I on the Phillies, the podcast that he has. Awesome podcast. Make sure to go check that out. Again, we really appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. Henry, you got anything else, man?
No, go Phils.
Go Phils. We're out of here. Peace.